Well, good afternoon. This is Sahara. I want to start off this YouTube by explaining to you what the meaning of life is. There once was a man that wanted to know the meaning of life. So he went to the Himalayas and he climbed up many mountains, week after week, month after month. Finally, he found a guru sitting on top of a mountain. And he went to the guru and said, "Oh, great guru, I want to know just one thing. What is the meaning of life?" And the guru looked at the man and said, "Why, life is just one damn thing after another. I thought everybody knew that." As you know, I have studied astrology all of my life. I went into astrology because I thought that it would give me the big picture. One of the big questions that came up was many of the outer planets, like Pluto, Uranus, Neptune, uh, and even Saturn, were not discovered until the late 1800s and early 1900s when uh, telescopes really got developed. And my thought was, if we're just seeing these things in the 1800s, late 1800s, how come the Greeks knew about them? I'm studying books that refer to these planets from Greek lore, and they're all correct. So that was one thing, and I'd ask teachers, I read books. There was no answer except here it is. And that's the way it is with a lot of things. But I wondered, how could I use this? And naturally, I went into it thinking, oh, this is wonderful. This is something I can do wonderful things with. And it turned out, doing astrology, I felt like I was just doing weather reports, which sounded like first it's going to be good, and then it's going to be bad, and then it's going to be good, and then you're going to die. So I was very clear that I didn't have any overview. I just had a daily weather report, which was kind of helpful, wonderful studying. It wasn't until I found the information on the Yugas, their big cosmic cycles, that all of a sudden things started to make sense. And I could see the light at the end of the tunnel, and it was very exciting. And I've started this series with a lot of predictions, and some of them are very scary. I mean, it just really looks like the sky is falling. We have climate warming and climate change, which is that's a game ender right there. We also have a world plagued by violence, disease. You know, but you live here. You know that sometimes it's kind of rough. So and also the predictions I have are a little on the scary side, and they're kind of channeled through. I'm not a channeler, but they're channeled through Yogananda teachings, a great guru, and he was a saint. And so he also said we were at a very scary time, and it was up to us to guide our planet and our whole lives to a better place instead of the Earth's destruction that sometimes is predicted. When I studied the Yugas, I found out that we were entering a new age. Well, that's what I wanted in the first place. I wanted the age of Aquarius. I wanted good things, not bad things, not scary things, not the earth ending and nuclear war and climate change and wars. I mean, I wanted I wanted that refreshing view, and when I found the Yugas, because I knew that we were into a good cycle in my early life. So let's look at, before I bring the predictions of the gloom and doom of the planet, I have predictions on Bernie Sanders, of course, Donald Trump, Putin, and things like that, and the kids at the border that separated families. And all this is like so creepy. So, but when I discovered the Yugas, which have been known about for centuries, there was the evidence. And it's mathematical. Astrology is mathematical, if anybody wants to know. Being psychic is easier. You pull it out of the air. Astrology is you do the math, and it's hard. So the one thing I found about the Yugas was that from 1000 AD to 1699 AD, I think 1700, there was little advancement of the human race. And even from 500 AD to 1000 AD, the biggest advancement in man was the wheelbarrow. That does not include torture devices in creepy old castles, which are there. But after that, the nicest thing we did to advance was the wheelbarrow. And can you imagine that happening in this age, the Silicon Valley age? Now, mind you, I'm trying to bring you the good news before the bad news, and I get to the bad news in the next YouTube. Um, this is a graph of the technology growth since the year 1000. I'm sorry, 1450 AD, and people here know, especially even the young people, they know that their life and the world they're living in is completely different from their parents. And if you are over 50, you're also aware of, and you must look back at your parents, your great grandparents, and what was their life like. It doesn't take much to see that we have made a huge leap. I guess a giant leap for mankind. So let's look at this cycle here. One of the first things that they started to bring in, oh, also, the most important thing is our view of history is linear, meaning we crawled up in the swamps and we began progressing. And our view of history is very short. And that's not true. Apparently, the earth and man and all the creatures on it are like millions of years old. We didn't just pop up here on the planet 6,000 years ago. So let's look at the current history of this time period. And this is where you start to see this huge change. It makes you realize, gee whiz, there's something going on here. First, we have the printing press, which was huge, since we had just been through a dark period where most books were burned. People didn't know how to read, and it was just awful. And we go on to the steam engine. Telescope is here around 1650, and that's when Copernicus, Galileo, and then finally Newton in the 1800s, at early 1800s, began making real progress in science. And that was a scientific revolution. And then we had one revolution after another. We went on to the light bulb, to the combustion engine, and right here, you see the demarcation here of inventions, and it's around 1900. That's a gigantic leap. So we're going to look at other things, and then here you can't even fit the technological or scientific discoveries here. You just can't. So With that in mind, you're understanding that things have changed drastically. And let's look a little more into why. And as long as you understand that we don't have this linear time cycle where we just evolution of the species, this our we've been here before on this planet, and our planetary system is runs in a cycle, not a linear scope. Signs of the New Age. In 1700 to 1900, there was a transition period from the Dark Ages, which were called the Iron Age. They were the Dark Ages, where mankind fell to the lowest point that was possible. Um, which is very creepy, when you study history. It's like one horrible thing after another. And we go into a transition period to 1900, which is just so wasn't too long ago. And that's when things took off, and you can see it on this graph. You see this explosion of progress, uh, and you name it. And I think you know that medicine and uh, flight communications, uh, and so at 1900 was the beginning. We ended this transition period at 1900, and we're full into Dvaiparta Yuga age. Dvaiparta Yuga. It's also called the Bronze Age, if that's easier to remember. So this was all followed by an explosion from electricity to flight to the moon, and the life cycle of man has almost doubled. This is life expectancy from 1000 AD. And look at this here. They say Jesus lived to like 32 years old. He was like an old man. Here at the average life expectancy was a little more than 20 years old. Okay. Then we move up to 1900s. Once again, you see this gigantic leap, and it goes up here. On this graph, just goes to 2000, and it goes up to 80, and you're beginning to realize that I guess you could kind of say coming up will be 100 is the new 20. I don't know if that works, but uh, that's what's happening, and it's in the last 120 years. Now, this is something I've said since I began this series, that we are on the verge of communicating in a nonverbal manner. We have discovered that all sentient beings, such as angels, beautiful picture, huh? Aliens, these guys look like fun. That I don't know much about. Angels, and also we're moving into the golden age. From Dvaiparta Yuga, you move into two more ages, which brings, um, way over 10,000 years of um, higher age, and we're beginning to realize that we have not been um, ascending, we have been descending, we have been de-evolving. And ancient people knew that we were going to go into this de-evolution. And now, thank God, we're moving into an ascending. So there's a big difference. We're going to reverse into where we come from. And the golden age would have been something like this. And as part of our racial memory, if you think about visions and thoughts of Eden, it's like we kind of remember there once was a time when it wasn't so hard and we lived in peace and harmony. And we lived in a golden age. We remember that. It's as if that's in our DNA. There once was a time when it was so much better. and we want to go back to that. People remember flying, and now we are, I mean, that's just part of our memory. And we began wanting to go back to the sky, and we did it with machines. But we might not need those planes that much longer. That's the fun thing. Higher ages have one language that becomes increasingly nonverbal. And some of the exercises I've brought to you in the past were how to work with this nonverbal ability. Personally, I'm ready for the flying lessons, really. So what we're going to, as we descended from the higher ages down into the dark age, we we began split our from the Tower of Babel, where God scattered the languages. You see, what happened was we became so small and myopic that people only spoke very limited language in small areas. If you traveled maybe 100 miles from where you were born, people spoke different languages. I've heard stories of people in Italy, and they could be in one town, yet there's four different languages. That is changing a lot. And there's what's happened is we have got a new global language in techno English, such as lots of love, LOL, by the way, Facebook, BFF, see you soon, and there's like they're popping up so fast. Pretty soon we'll just speak in anagrams, which, by the way, is what they're beginning to feel was the Egyptian hieroglyphs. We getting um, communication from 3,000 years ago, and we can't understand still what these little pictures mean, and they're anagrams. In these new ages, we have increased gender and racial equality. And please just think of the 1900s that um, we just were barely letting black people be equal, civil rights. That was like a huge change, which is amazing. And I think it was 1920 that women got the vote. Boy, that's just crazy. But look how far we've come. So as we ascend into the advanced ages, people live longer, which has happened. And in 100 years, people have increased their lifespan by 50 years. That's a lot. And in the advanced ages, the earth gives of itself freely. We become taller, smarter. We actually, it's beginning, people are beginning to think that because they had the golden age, that the people really were golden in color. But in this new age, the earth gives of its fruits more freely. The struggle to survive ceases, and even among microorganisms, um, they start to, we have less disease. If you think about it, disease always comes from microorganisms. That begins to fall away. We've kind of come this far from our medicine. Everything has made us advance. This is a graph of the YUGA cycle, and it shows going from uh, a descending age, which we've just finished, down into the Dark Ages, also known as the Iron Age and the Kali Yuga, Kala Yuga age. Now we are here. We've just passed this point here, and we've just entered. So instead of things getting worse, as it has, they're getting better, and we move into these enlightened ages. It's a day and night cycle of huge proportions. Our solar system, as we have a day and night on the Earth, so does the sun as it moves around the solar system, and we're headed towards our binary partner, Sirius. So think of the profound effects of night and day has on every living creature as we move from our daily life to a sleep cycle. Within 12 hours everything completely changes, and our conscious level changes, which is pretty big. It's it's uh, it's huge if you think about your life when you're in dreamland and when you're sleeping and awake. And so we go from a 12-hour night and day sleep cycle to a 12,000 year solar system cycle where the day and the night is kind of a huge chunk of time. So finally, we begin to wake up to our divinity. In one Earth day or 12-hour spin, changes in our consciousness become happen because of the electromagnetic change in the Earth, day and night. Our sun has this day and night cycle, which really ends up equating to 24,000 years. Getting a visual handle on this cycle, it's you have to visualize it, just like you had to try to figure out what the solar system was like night and day. What would you do if somebody just landed here and you had to explain it? Sometimes it's dark, sometimes it's light. Okay, and think of seasons happen within a year. You have springtime and wintertime, night and day. So you have these big changes, and it is a change in conscious level because in the end, your conscious level is the most important thing. It is the doer, maker of all things. But here's the Kali Yuga age. It goes from here to here. We descended, and this would have been about the time of Jesus. This would have been about the last records we have of the pyramids. So you can see why our history is so limited. But we've moved up here, take this little sun and move it up here, and we're at the Dwapara Yuga cycle, which is um, 2,600 years long. Then we go into a larger cycle, and this is the Silver Age. This is really when we start to move into true enlightenment, where you communicate telepathically, and everything changes from here. And you're enlightened. The whole planet is enlightened. You live hundreds of years, and we have stories that reach back into time, and we try to figure out how come these people are living so long. I always thought it was because of a change of keeping time. Maybe they kept time in lunar cycles instead of the people that live for hundreds and hundreds of years. They were also taller, smarter, and then we move into the true golden age. It's called the Satya Yuga, and it goes on for about 10,000 years. Then we go down into an descending age, and this is kind of where our history, right about here, uh, what we have left over from the pyramids chart. There's one thing about the pyramids is when you look at them, you see that as monoliths, they don't have, they're not built around weapons. The Dark Ages, all their what's left of castles and things like that shows things are meant for defense, attacking, weapons, protection. So, but when you're up here, you don't have that anymore. You look at the pyramids and you're like, well, there's no moats, no walls, there's no weapons. They could do apparently pretty great things, but they didn't have weapons. So you that you know. And then I've got a picture of another uh, find that's more astounding than the pyramids. And once again, you have no no weapons, actually no people live nearby, but because you'd have evidence of civilization. But what's left over is amazing. Here is Gobekli Kelly Tepe. Gobekli Tepe. And this place is a find in Turkey, and it's brand new. The whole place was buried. And these monoliths here, they're like pieces of the pyramid. There's this tons, big tons, and they're kind of almost shaped into a pyramid shape, not a pyramid, a T shape. And there's many of them with a T-shaped big stones. We're talking tons and tons here, and it's extensive. This now the thing about these monoliths, they were buried. That's why they were never found. And the question, of course, nobody's got answers for what these are except they're technically impossible for a less advanced civilization. And what were they? It's a total mystery, and it's a really big area. The thing is, did they want us to find them? Because these were all buried. Like if you think of all this covered up with dirt, these were all buried. Did they want us to find it? Was this a sign? Because the Egyptians tried to uh, give us knowledge, and that's another whole story there. They knew that we were going into a dark age, and they were trying to do things to keep us enlightened and lift us up. Now, you look at this, what must have been a gigantic civilization. There's no weapons. There's no there's no sign of people living there. No cities surrounded it. It's just these uh, many multi-ton structures that are they've just discovered a few of them, and nobody can figure it out. The one thing is, when you're looking at the higher ages, you begin to realize that in the golden ages, you're not having to what if you don't have to defend yourself? Okay, you don't have weapons. Your whole civilization is not built around weapons as they were in the Dark Ages. It was that way with the pyramids. Eventually, they were, of course, run over by barbarians and God knows what and destroyed that civilization because they didn't have to deal with um, the horrible wars and heathens coming in to wreck everything and kill people. Now, here, another thought is there's no sign of people living here. The thought is if you live in a place where the earth gives freely of its fruit, you can communicate nonverbally. Who needs a cell phone? Uh, you and you can just walk outside. Well, there is no outside. You're not having to live out within an enclosure any more than you need moats and castles to protect yourself. You're not needing to particularly have a structure. The earth gives freely of itself, and it's not as hostile. So you don't need to build castles and houses. We nowadays we have to have castles. We have to have houses just because our environment is not a friendly one, and it's not climate-wise. The earth does not give freely of its fruits because if we want to have eat, we have to actually work at it to have farms and things like that. So we de-evolved into farming. We thought that was evolution, that we moved into cities and began having an agricultural society. No, we were descending. into an age when we were forced to have to uh, get the earth to produce. We had to figure it out. We weren't sitting around on a mountaintop watching the sunrise, reaching out a hand. There's a piece of fruit. Uh, no disease. Nobody's going to attack you. Animals are not going to attack you. It's a time of non-competition. The fight for life goes away. This is a picture of the our sun moving through space. It is like a comet dragging along the planets behind it. It's moving at speeds that I can't even contemplate it. So here we are. We're on this like something is moving in light years in space, the sun, and the planets are kind of making a vortex and moving along behind it. Now, where does this journey leave us? Oh, I have to bring you a reminder that sometimes my camera cuts out too fast. If all of a sudden this this stops, the recording stops, please come to the second YouTube. I always just end up making a follow up. Now, where does all this lead us? As I mentioned before, I have all these psychic predictions of things that in the near future, and it was getting kind of sad or scary. The Earth is going through some bad changes. Our politics is a mess. We have starving little kids at the border of the U.S. Um, and our our current administration is putting the little children into cages. It looks like our democracy is about to fall apart. And I also got some predictions about Bernie Sanders, Putin, and Trump. And but I did not want to bring that to you on the coming ice age and the Gulf Stream stopping to circulate, which is the end of civilization as we know it. And what fun is that? So but I also know about the Yugas, thank God, or this knowledge would just be too much to deal with. To get if you don't get the big picture, and then you find out that it's all about the big picture. So we're looking at the cycle. We're coming out here. This is where we've been, dark ages. This is the trash bin of our humanity, and history looking back since Greece, and that's about as far as our history goes back to the pyramids. You see, we were advanced all the way through here, and we get Gobekli Tepe. We started to realize, wait a minute, these people are really evolved. They were over 10,000 years ago. They're twice, if not three times, older than the pyramids, and there's no setup for protection, farming, and survival as we understand it. We have been de-evolving. And I don't know about you, but I'm ready for the evolving part. And the facts and figures, it isn't like you have some kooky astrologer coming up with far out theories that they're dreaming about. These are real facts, and you can go to Gobekli Tepe and the pyramids, and you find out that it's real. You know, the thing that fascinates me is we lost our knowledge goes to about here, maybe here. This is the Gobekli Tepe. This is the pyramids, and as we go down, things are getting worse and worse. But when when you look at, say, the pyramids here, okay, and the Gobekli Tepe, we're just as we remember, we're going to remember what we forgot. As we get higher and higher, we then have the ability to comprehend or even find uh, what used to be. This will correspond, like say, if this is 2000 BC, and this is 2000 AD, which is where we're at time wise. This is going to reflect this. What was lost, falling away here, it starts to be remembered or found or discovered at that time specifically. And that's why we, in the very beginning, with the late 1800s, we began finding, quote unquote, these planets that we knew about all along. So as our consciousness widened to be able to comprehend what these things mean, we began to actually get proof, i.e., we see the planet, we see the archaeological digs. And what will we find soon? Time is speeding up. That's kind of clear. And these things will become more and more evident. How did they do what they did and why? So, this is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. There is actual astrological proof as to why this is happening. We're headed towards the star Sirius and the Golden Age. We're not descending. The people of these times, the pyramids and the Göbekli Tepe, they were doing things to preserve what they knew. And they tried to think of ways they could convey what they knew. And what we have is glyphs at the pyramids, and we're like, we don't get it at all. If we were to try to send uh, uh, some some language, some information about our current civilization, say 100 years from now, and we're talking in anagrams, we're talking in big concepts. Big concept is, um, by the way, that is a thought, and as opposed to an actual, you know, you getting what I'm saying, it gets condensed. So, but I had to bring this new age to you that every day that passes, time is speeding up and things are getting better. It certainly does not seem that way. I communicated with some people that wrote these fantastic books on the Yuga cycles. It is no greater scholarly research than the books that this is taken from. And I said, you know, I just sent them emails. I said, well, you know what? At each age, the switchover is a little rough with a great flood and the ice age and in here, and it gets worse and worse and worse as every time we change an age here, 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 there's disasters. So, and they can be um, you can find evidence of them. I'm saying, well, we're changing into new age. 1900 is a beginning of a new age. It leads to think that the Mayan calendar was correct. At 2012 is not only the end, but it is the beginning. And that's what they were trying to say. Once again, we have civilizations with that knowledge lost because we destroy them because we're idiots. So now we're regaining that knowledge by understanding the yugas. And when I did ask some of the scholars who had written about the yuga cycles, are we going to undergo this great cataclysm, great endings and great beginnings like we had in the past? And the answer was always, we don't know. You see, this was descending, and it got worse and worse and worse. And here, we're into a change. Obviously, the planet is undergoing a terrible. We're pre-cataclysm right now, actually, and uh, but it's supposed to get better. So the scholar said we have no information as to, like, if you were to go back 12,000 years, go back here, go back here, go back here, what was going on here at 24,000 years. We don't know what was going on. We have no history for 24,000 years ago. Everything was destroyed around here that we have knowledge of. And I was surprised, but I learned that stones actually don't have the kind of life that I always thought if you had a big rock, it would be there 24,000 years later. Not particularly true. They get worn down. And that might be why Göbekli Tepe was buried. It was preserved. Somebody did that. They made monoliths that were thousands of pounds, tons. I'm sorry, tons. And so what happens here? Is this beginning or the end? Can we change it? The answer might be with Yogananda um, and his guru, Sri Yukteswar. It's an unusual name. Sri Yukteswar was a saint who taught Yogananda. He wanted Yogananda to go to the West, and he sent him in 1920. He wanted to bring the West up to speed about these things that were foretold and what to do about it. Um, Sri Yukteswar is a disciple of Babaji, and there's a long lineage, and Jesus is one of these gurus, and they're all trying to tell us something. Now, Yogananda died in 1952, but he did set a spark. He wanted to uh, combine the ancient knowledge of India with the technological knowledge of the West. And his vision was, he was a visionary, of course. Um, these gurus can do like everything that Jesus did because Jesus was too a guru. Um, he he said this time was the most precarious time, around 2020. Um, and he did foresee the end of our civilization, but he also said it can be dealt with and it can be changed. We don't have to wipe the slate clean like we did in the previous descending ages. Yogananda had some disciples, and he sent them forth to make um, communities that were self-sustaining. He said, get away from the cities and become self-sustaining so that you can survive and have a spiritual clue. These communities are spiritually oriented by meditation and yoga. And uh, so Yogananda said, go forth. And there's now about 30 Ananda villages. That's what they're called, Ananda. Ananda means joy. Ananda villages worldwide, and people can go there and live in peace and harmony, which they've been doing since like around 1967 was when um, Swami Kriyananda began these villages. He followed through on what his guru told him. These villages are um, breaking all the records for growth and people coming together, meditating, and they're self-sustaining. That means if the bomb drops or the health fees is over, they can sustain themselves. They're not a hippie commune at like the 60s. They have modern day lives, jobs, but it's a self-sustaining community. So that's what Yogananda brought to the West. And if you want to know more about Ananda, you can go online and look up ananda.com. And they have Ananda villages in everywhere from Czechoslovakia, Russia, Italy, lots and lots in India, and good couple sturdy bases here in the U.S. So they're pretty spread out, and they're self-sustaining, and they're doing fine no matter what. And they're carrying a spiritual message that it's all about God and it's all about conscious level. And that was what Yogananda brought to the West. And now I'm bringing news that I'm getting psychically from dreams. I meditate a lot, so I think I'm being influenced by this knowledge. And I'm seeing things like little kids in cages at the border. I'm seeing the earth freezing over. I'm seeing Putin trying to take over the world. Our democracy's crumbling, on and on and on. You can't drink the water. There is no water. So it's running out. Guess what? So the earth is not giving of itself freely. And the point is, Yogananda felt that we could change. He also saw in 1952 that North Korea would continue to be a big threat. And here we are, always having not little, but little fisticuffs with North Korea. Could that be what Yogananda was seeing about North Korea? Of course, we did have a war with North Korea. They were very aggressive from the start. And so he saw that North Korea was a big problem, and it still is. They're here. They are. They're still here. How can we change it? And the point is, you change it with your conscious level. You can get active, of course. Get a farm. Be self-sustaining. Go to one of these villages or live nearby and contribute to a self-sustaining village so that our civilization can continue on to experience these wonderful new high ages. My next video is going to bring some information about current events, and current events. So I want to thank you for sticking with this YouTube and I want you to remember, most importantly, don't forget, remember that a new age is coming, no matter what. No matter what the crazy leaders do and what terrible wars there are, remember that it's getting better. And if the a cosmological view of the cycles of not just the Earth but of the Sun doesn't make you realize that we are headed into a new age, no matter what. We just would like to arrive in better condition than we are now. And will there be peace and harmony and love among the planets? Yes, it's quite possible. It will, no matter what. Even if we do um, blow ourselves up over something god awful stupid, the human race will go on. I just don't want to lose my iPhone. I think we've come a long way. It's hate to see it going away. One thing about the civilizations of Göbekli Tepe and the pyramids and the Egyptians, and looking at the civilization, they didn't have the uh, mechanism for waging war. They didn't need to. That's what we're going to. We won't need to wage war. We won't need to. Uh, we won't be attacked by microorganisms every time you get a cold. Um, and the lion will lay down with the lamb because competition between species will end. And we're seeing it happen now, and it's happening very, very rapidly. Do be sure to subscribe. It's the only way you will know when I post the new predictions coming up for coming back down to Earth and this time in space, bringing you new predictions for the most current time. And so when you are seeing stuff that look like the evening news that are so frightening, um, just know that it's getting better. But remember, the ancient ages, they didn't need to even have a language. They didn't need to have shelter. they didn't need to protect themselves from anything. So that sounds pretty nice, but we got to get to that point of higher consciousness. I bid you adieu. Remember, Yogananda said, you in every thought and every moment and every word, you are either moving towards God or away from God. Remember that always.